Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Financial Literacy Webinars presented by Gainbridge, a digital platform of financial products and member of Group 1001, an insurance holding company. My name is Cheryl Lala Chavez, and I'm joined every month by Lauren Williams, a four-time Olympian and certified financial planner. In each of our episodes, we'll also have a Parity Athlete Ambassador. This month, we welcome Abigail Dunkin, Team USA Paralympian in wheelchair basketball and gold medalist. Welcome to you both.
It is good to be here yet again. Let's get this party started.
It is good to be here.
Awesome. It's good to have both of you here. So today we're having some money conversations around topics that people don't typically want to discuss or talk about: estate planning, insurance. Lauren, as a certified financial planner, why do you think people are hesitant to complete their estate planning?
Oh, because everybody is very excited to die, right? And everybody's very excited to talk about the idea of death. It's exactly that reason that people avoid this topic, is they don't want to plan for when they're not going to be around anymore. They don't want to plan for catastrophes or worst case scenarios. But we absolutely need to, because what happens is when we avoid those things and the inevitable happens at some point, we leave a lot of stress and strain for our family. It creates a lot of anxiety, either for you or for the people around you who you love and care so much about. And the last thing you want to do is create stress for someone in a situation that's already stressful because something has happened to you. So we got a plan.
Definitely. Abby, as an athlete, have you thought about or completed any estate planning documents? Is this a topic that athletes are talking about?
If I'm going to be totally honest with you, absolutely not. I have not given it 1 ounce of thought, but I should, especially after hearing what Lauren just said. I definitely need to. And as athletes, while we're competing, we're so focused on competing. We're not focused on what we're going to do next. It's kind of like when we're in high school about to go to college. In the real world, we don't know what a credit card is. We don't know how to do our taxes. We're not taught that. Just as we're not taught the financial stuff that we need to know after we're done competing or what we're going to do, right? And so I think there needs to be more resources, more things out there for athletes, even in the very beginning of their athletic career, like, hey, take these steps, get these steps done as soon as you possibly can. That way you can build on as you go throughout your career. And by the time you are done and ready for retirement, you're not freaking out. You're not thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do? How am I going to do it? Because that was me about a year and a half ago, still kind of now. But I'm definitely going to put a lot more thought into it. So thank you.
I think you touched on a really good point, Abby, in the idea of like, nobody is thinking about this when we're competing in sport. I know I definitely thought I was invincible. I'm going to totally be a world-class athlete forever. I'm young, I'm healthy, I'm fit. Like death, like I can't die.
That's not happening today. I hope not, but.
So there was absolutely no reason to worry about this. Like I can do that adulting thing later. Like you said, sometimes life throws us curveballs. And when we're over 18, we're no longer under our parents' care. We are not minors at that point anymore. And it's a huge gap for everyone. You know, we go off to college even, and we're like adults, but we very much are dependent on our parents. And you don't realize that someone's going to have to sign some documents if something happens to you, and it's going to have to all get figured out. Mom and dad can't just run through the door and say, hey, do this surgery or do that thing, because at that point you're an adult. So this is why we want to have documents in place, because even if you're alive, something catastrophic happens, you want to have documents in place that say what's going to happen in those weird situations as well.
Yeah, like you both, I never thought about estate planning when I was an athlete at all. I didn't actually think about it until I actually had children well after I had retired as an athlete. And so, I thought about it way too late, honestly. Lauren, can you walk us through what exactly estate planning is and how an athlete would go about, doing something like this?
Yeah, so estate planning is planning for what you have after you're not around anymore, and planning for what you have should you be incapacitated or unable to make decisions on your own. And so when we think about that, that is your bank accounts. Who is going to inherit the money there? Will they figure it out if you don't ever put anything in place? Yes, but it will also cost you money for them to figure it out. And I say the state, whatever state you live in is going to have what we call a probate process, and they're going to decide where your bank accounts go. So, if Cheryl's my best friend and she totally wanted me to have all her money, like that could slow down the process. They're probably still going to give it to her spouse and her children, but people coming up against your estate and saying, hey, I want to make some sort of claim to this, slows down the process. Whereas if you have something very organized that says like, upon my death, pass this along to my, spouse, and if not my spouse, then on to my children, or whatever the case may be, then it goes directly there as opposed to through this probate process. And there is no room for somebody like me to pop up and be like, hey, they wanted me to have that money. And like I said, one, it slows the process down, but two, it costs more because there's actually a fee to facilitate any kind of estate planning process. So what is estate planning? It is having wills in place. It is having trust in place. It is saying where everything you have, like, your favorite pair of earrings, your favorite t-shirt, who do you want to have that? Do you want your house to be sold, or do you want them to keep it in the family? All the things that are yours, planning for what happens to them should you not be able to make decisions on your own or not be here at all anymore. Where do you want it to go?
Awesome. So Abby, when you hear this, what are you thinking about?
Thinking, damn it, I need to get on it. I need to get on it. No, there's just so much, I guess, especially the athletes that we don't think about and that goes into it. And even the thought of putting that stress on family and friends, God forbid something were to happen, I don't want that stress to be there. And so making sure plans are in place to make sure that everything is as easy flow as it possibly can be. I'm definitely looking at my documents and everything I need to, like, tomorrow to get the ball rolling. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Lauren.
Glad I could be helpful with this very morbid thing.
I know.
The biggest thing you can do, don't stick your head in the sand, because it's like, I don't really want to deal with it. It's like a chore, it's like, I can clean the bathroom later. And then later never comes, and someone's coming over. You're like, oh my God, my bathroom's dirty. Like, yeah, later. And then you're dead. And the poop has hit the fan sort of thing. So.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why we're doing this and we're having these conversations, right? Is just to facilitate these conversations that we typically procrastinate on and don't, bring to fruition. So Gainbridge has a financial education center on their website. Under planning for retirement and investing in your future, you'll be able to find the articles that we're going to be talking about today on estate planning and then shopping for insurance as well. These articles include guides to learn about types of insurance you should consider, as well as premiums and deductibles that you can afford. So speaking about premiums and deductibles, Lauren, can you explain that to us? What is premiums and deductibles?
Yes. Well, it depends on what kind of insurance we're talking about, but the deductible is the thing that you have to pay before your insurance kicks in. So car insurance is a really good example. People usually have a $500 deductible. That's pretty standard, you'll see, but it applies for health insurance. It applies for homeowners insurance. You're going to have a deductible. And so that means if something happens to this piece of property that is insured, you first need to pay something out of your pocket, and it is that deductible amount. We're deducting it basically. And then the insurance will kick in. So your car gets wrecked and needs $10,000 worth of repairs. You have to pay $500, and then the insurance kicks in and pays the other $9,500. You have to have some skin in the game to, in order for them to say like, okay, we'll pay this claim. So you want to be mindful of that. And another thing I always like to point out for people is that once you've raised your emergency fund, which is something we've talked about in some of our other videos, it's okay to raise your deductible. So let's say you make $120,000 a year. Well, we recommend a 3-month emergency fund. That's $30,000. If you got $30,000 of cash sitting in the bank, a $500 deductible is not going to hurt so much. Why not raise that deductible up to maybe like $1,000 if there's an accident? And now your premiums go down, which leads us to that kind of next point of what you were asking. The premium is what you pay on a monthly basis. So that's like the cost of having this insurance to keep you covered and keep you going. So there's, I said, car insurance, health insurance premiums, homeowners insurance premiums. Homeowners is generally going to be paid annually. Sometimes they offer it monthly, but that's what you're paying to get the insurance. And it's usually a fraction of what it would cost you should you have a big loss. So you're paying $200 or $300 a month for car insurance, and it hurts. It doesn't feel very good at all. Like, that's $3,600 I threw away this year because I didn't get in an accident. But literally one accident that cost 10 grand, and that's 3 years of premiums that you've kind of been paying into this thing to make sure you're covered in a situation like that. Don't have to wipe out a bank account or put yourself in financial disrepair.
Yeah, definitely. And so when we're thinking about an athlete, when an athlete is thinking about insurances that they should have, Lauren, what should they have? Health, you said, homeowner's car if they have a car. What else?
Yeah, so health insurance is gonna, like I said, cover you should you be ill. Homeowners insurance, if you're a homeowner, you absolutely want to make sure your home is covered. And there's also the liability piece of insurance. So, someone slips and falls in front of your home and they say that you're liable, your homeowner's insurance will pick that up, but you need to make sure you have proper liability insurance. Other things is, like I said, if you're a renter, same sort of thing is someone can say you're liable for something and they could come up and they would sue you. If you've got this insurance, it can help you make sure that you're not getting sued. You also want to be thinking about, as it pertains to home and renters, property coverage. So if you are a very lavish person, you put a $10,000 bed frame on, and you got a really fancy water bed. I don't know, I'm making it up here, but you got some really nice stuff in your house. There's general coverage that's going to be offered for property should your house, something happen to your house. But if you got some really fancy stuff, it might not be enough. So you always want to check your property coverage to make sure that it's good. And same thing if you're a renter. So you're buying Lucci, Gooey, whatever. Who's the person? Louis and Gucci. You see, I don't shop there very frequently. You got a apartment full of purses. They're probably going to have very little insurance on your renter's insurance. You want to take that into consideration because your apartment building burns down and they give you $1,000 and you've got $20,000 worth of bags in there. You're going to have a problem. So we talked health insurance, homeowners insurance, renter's insurance. You also might want to think about disability insurance. And this is a tough one, especially for athletes where you don't have income outside of your sport, because disability for an athlete means that you're unable to play your sport. And so that's a much higher likelihood than someone who sits at a desk all day and type, and the probability that they will become disabled. So sometimes it's cost prohibitive for an athlete to get disability insurance, but I definitely think it's something worth looking into. Higher earning athletes are going to have a better chance of being able to purchase it, and they're also going to have more on the line. Us regular folk over here are probably going to, in addition to our sport, also be working somewhere. And so they're going to offer disability insurance through your employer, and you absolutely want to opt into it. It's the one thing that I see most frequently with clients, they opt out of because they're like, I don't need this. This is an extra $3 out of my paycheck. We're 3 times more likely at this age to become disabled than we are to kick the bucket. So while life insurance is important, and I'm going there next, you don't want to opt out of the disability insurance, because if you do become disabled, either for a short period of time or a long period of time, you're going to wish you had that coverage. And so then last but not least is life insurance. And so that, in fact, it covers your life. So you want to look at, who would I leave behind if I wasn't, here anymore, and what kind of costs are related to them being left behind. Your employer is generally going to offer like 1 or 2 times your salary. That's kind of standard. So you make $100,000 a year. They will give you $100,000 of life insurance that you can put your spouse or someone else as the beneficiary on. You can maybe sometimes bump it up and opt into more insurance. But as an athlete, like you said, sometimes we don't have these options available to us, and you want to go out to the private market and get insurance. Well, I would say absolutely you want to look into term life insurance, which is going to cover you for a term of time, generally like a 30-year term. So you're 20, it's going to cover you for 30 years. You're going to be covered until 50. So you're like, well, that's not for my whole life. Like, what if, I plan on living past 50, Lauren? The idea is that you pay really inexpensive costs for this, or really expensive, inexpensive premiums. And then you're able to use that money to invest, save up. And by the time you're 50, you've got $1 million in the bank. So you don't need $1 million life insurance policy, because you actually have a legacy to leave behind for your family. So you want to be thinking about life insurance from a standpoint of who will be left behind and who do I need to care for. And you probably, generally the rule is like you want to have 10 times whatever your salary is. So your employer gave you 1 time, and I said, if you're lucky, you get 2 times, 10 times. And people were like, that's a lot of money. So my example, you made $100,000, 10 times, that's $1 million of life insurance. People are like, well, my family's going to try to kill me if I leave $1 million in insurance. And it's like, in the grand scheme of things, it's not that much. You've got little ones, Cheryl, right? So yes. If you're not here anymore, you want to make sure that they can continue to go to their schooling. You want to make sure that maybe like a nanny can step in and help your spouse out. You want to make sure that their college is paid for. It's not just the income that you're earning right now this year that they're going to get. It's like your income is what they were dependent on all the way through age 18, or really through 21 when they get through college. And we know that kids are really for life. So that's where these bigger numbers become really relevant. All right, I'll be quiet now and hand the stage back over.
No. I think it's really helpful to kind of think about those things. And like I said, the only reason I started thinking about insurance is because I did have kids, right? So Abby, as you're thinking about this, have you considered any of these insurances? Do you have them? What do you find challenging about, this whole shopping process, I guess?
Well, one, don't mind me. I'm literally like writing notes over here to keep this in mind. So one thing about health insurance, especially as somebody with a lengthy health history, I was very fortunate enough. My father or still is an American Airlines pilot. So with very good health insurance. So I was able to leverage that until I turned 26, and that's when you get booted off your parents' health insurance. And so I got denied from various health carriers. And so I didn't have insurance there for a little bit until I will have my current job now, thanks to my employer. So I do have health insurance. I have vision, I have dental, life insurance, all those insurances. But what I really need to look at is life insurance. So that's what I was just writing notes on, and look at that actually tomorrow. But it's something that, like I said, we just don't think about, and we take it for granted. And like you said, the dirty bathroom, and it's never going to come until it one day comes. And we think, oh my God, it's here. And I just screwed myself over because I didn't take care of this earlier. But definitely more thought into this for sure.
You bring up a really good point, Abby, about the idea of like aging out of parents and in insurance. As like you said, they teach us nothing about adulting, nothing about filing taxes, any of these things. And it's like, oh, like I'm young, I'm healthy, I wasn't really worried about this insurance thing. And then it's like, oh crap, I need what? Where am I supposed to get it from? And then the premiums on a monthly basis for health insurance are frequently cost prohibitive. And so that's a whole nother thing that needs to be planned for and, improved, of course, in the American system in general. But you absolutely want to be thinking about that before it hits you, and you want to be saving up for it. If you're 24 or 25 watching this right now, the day will come when you get kicked off your parents' insurance, and you want to be planning ahead. It's great if you have an employer because that makes it a lot more affordable. But if you're going to be an entrepreneur, that ball is in your court to be able to save up and, pay those monthly premiums on your own.
Yeah, I very quickly realized how expensive it is. I'm thinking, oh my God, I don't like this adulting thing. But in my deductible is like crazy high. But yeah, it's just one of the things I never thought of until now. And so when I saw it take on my paycheck for the first time, I thought, wow, that is a lot. Just for basic health insurance, just to make sure I can go to the doctor when I need to, or basic antibiotics if I have a cold or whatever. Yeah, it's still mind blowing to me.
Yeah. And Abby, as you think about life insurance, you had mentioned that you were going to be shopping around for life insurance. What are challenges when it comes to thinking even about considering life insurance?
I think the biggest question for me is where to start, how to start that process. What I know I mentioned key things like looking at 10 times your salary. And so, like I said, this is going to be one of my top things to do tomorrow. Is kind of look around, see what options I have, and then just kind of see where to go from there. And yeah, do a lot of Google searching.
Yeah. Lauren, what do you think about that? How can you advise Abby in this case?
Yeah, I mean, I think she's exactly on the right track. This idea that, educate yourself first, because insurance is one of those things that can get really scammy and it can put people off. I'm a certified financial planner, but there are people that refer to themselves as just like financial advisors. And that's a pretty broad and general term. And generally what their main job is selling insurance. So you need to be mindful because someone will show up and you start this process and they're like, "Ooh, she's looking for insurance. Okay, like let's see how much we can sell her." And it's like you absolutely need this insurance, but also if you run into scammy Sam, we'll call them. They may say that you need to get the insurance that's $500 a month when you could have got insurance that was $50 a month. The reason they say buy the $500 a month insurance is because they make a commission off of the insurance being sold. So if they can figure out like, $500 in your budget, like, and now all of a sudden you're not paying your car note because you got to get this insurance because they told you it was so important and it was the adult thing to do. You want to just be mindful of what do I actually need? Why do I need it? And then educating yourselves about the different types of insurance. So I mentioned term insurance. Like I said, I'm a big proponent of that. There's other kinds of insurance: whole life, universal life, variable life. Scammy Sam will tell you that they're investments. We're talking about insurance. What do all these other insurances do? They protect you in the event of a catastrophe. So don't be sold by Scammy Sam that this is an investment. It is actually insuring your life in the event of a catastrophe, just like health, just like disability, all the other things. And so just be mindful of those sorts of things as you do your research. Understand why whole life and universal and variable are much more expensive, and understand, like I said, you may decide that those are right for you, but understand how they work. Don't just take someone else's word for it.
Gotcha. That process just sounds overwhelming to start, but daunting. But this is why people avoid it for so long. But you shouldn't, right? That's the whole thing. Yeah, yeah. And I think one of my sad stories really around renter's insurance was that I had my car broken into, which is a really common thing. And I had just bought a new camera, and I love photography. So I had this really expensive camera, and I was at the golf course, of course. And so I thought it was going to be safe because it was a place that I went to all the time. And my camera, was stolen. And I remember somebody saying, like, if you had renter's insurance, it would have been covered. I'm not sure why it was covered in the car. I still don't know like the whole, why it's covered where, but I remember I was like, I'm getting renter's insurance, and got renter's insurance that same day.
It's so cheap. Renter's insurance is like $12 a month.
Yeah. It is absolutely. And I was like, why hadn't I done this before? Why hadn't I even thought about this? I didn't even know there was such a thing as renter's insurance, honestly. So in Gainbridge's Financial Education Center, there's also an article about mindful living. Lauren, how do you think when somebody gets their documents together like this, right? Like they get the insurance, they get the estate planning, all that stuff. How do you think that leads to a healthier life?
Oh, well, it takes a lot of stress off your plate because like things are going exactly where you want them to, and you can live a lot more free. Like, okay, well, I know if something happens to me, my family's going to be well cared for. I know exactly, what's going to happen if I was to pass away. Like, I'm going to be cremated versus I'm going to be stuffed in a box and buried in the ground. And do you want to have a traditional service in a church, or do you want your ashes sprinkled in Colombia? Like those things off your plate to know, like it just gives you the ability to be able to live that much more freely. So as we think about like mindful living, there's different risks that people are willing to take, and there's risks that people are just not willing to take. By asking yourself a lot of hard questions and going through this process, you kind of decipher what risk I am willing to take and what I'm not willing to take. And it also makes that a lot more clear for you moving forward. One of the big things that came out for me when I was doing my estate planning documents is like, if I get held for ransom, I love to travel. I don't want anyone to pay a ransom for me. And people are just like, you're crazy. Like there's programs and all these different things. But, talking to an estate planning attorney and like I said, going through this list of questions made me really think about it. I was like, I don't want my funds to be diminished. I've lived a really awesome life. And if it's my time to go, like I'd rather my family have that money than to give it all, to deplete my estate and start life over. And, kidnap me, then don't bring me back. And it's a crazy thing, but it makes you think about some of the most random situations and how you want to live, but it allows me to live that much more freely.
Wow, that's an intense example, but thank you for it. It's like, oh my gosh, I've never thought about that. I don't think my estate planner asked me that question. I'm now like, all my wheels are turning. Abby, for you, when you think about mindful living, as a Paralympian, and oftentimes a mentor as well, like how does being a mentor kind of play into your overall well-being?
Yeah, since I retired amidst the pandemic, once the games were postponed was when I decided to focus on my health and try to get back on my 2 feet. It's really changed that definition for me and opened my eyes to a whole new world that I never thought of. Even sport takes you places that you never dream of and meet people that you never thought you would meet in different cultures and backgrounds. And it's just a really cool thing. But it's life after sport. Well, as we're an athlete, we're competing. We have one goal constantly, the same common goal with our teammates. But then after, it's like, okay, well, what now? Well, what am I here for? Right. And so being mindful of, as a team player, how could I be the best teammate to somebody? How could I be something to someone else? But now I need to be mindful of me. What do I need to do? And sometimes that stresses me out because I don't know how to do it. Right. And so in talking about the estate planning is like, how do you get started in doing something like that? And then how to take that first step. And so I think being mindful of everything that I put off for me for so long is I can finally do that. Focus on me physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, any aspect of my life I possibly can. So it's been a fun, long, unknown journey. But like I said, even with estate planning, how do you get started in something like that? Because you brought up a really good point. I never thought about being mindful in that way. Even we mentioned it was kind of a little bit of a crazy example, but how would you get started in something with like estate planning? Like, what would be the first step that you would tell an athlete?
Ooh, this is a good question. I would say the first thing that you should do is think about what you want for your life. Who are the people you care about? That's usually the first question I ask my clients. And they write down, mom, dad, siblings, spouse, kids, or whoever those people are. And then I say, well, what would happen if they weren't here anymore? So that's kind of like question number 2 to get you thinking. And it's like, like, what do you mean? And some people have, already lost a parent or maybe lost a child, or, they've experienced loss at some point in their life. And so they go to those moments and they think about what it looked like when that person wasn't around anymore. How did you feel in that moment? Now add to that what the financial piece of the puzzle, and having to figure out how, if you're the main caretaker, because generally the first set of people you name are people that you would be deeply involved in their process. What does it look like? Do you know if they have documents? And you're like, oh my goodness, I never thought to ask my parents that sort of thing. How would you feel if your parent wasn't here anymore? And then add on top of it, you have no idea how you're going to for your parents' funeral, or if they had any documents, if they had any life insurance, if they had, all these sorts of things. I find that for my clients, that's what gives them motivation. So we talk about like where to start with doing some like deep thinking about the people that you care about and what it looks like for you not to be around and how they would feel if you're not around, but also for them not to be around and how you would feel. And that's like, oh my goodness, I could not, I would just be on the floor crying, like, inconsolably. I wouldn't even know where to start to pick myself up and go out and find their insurance documents, their so-and-so documents, or such and such documents. Like, I absolutely don't want to be worried about that if something happens to my parent. Let me go get that stuff done. Let me go talk to my parents and make sure. But then it also becomes a process where you can do that thing with somebody else. And so, to the point of getting started, when you're overwhelmed and you feel very alone, that's the thing that slows people down. But wouldn't it be cool if your parents also don't have their documents in place to be like, hey, let's do this together. Let's all work through this. Like, this is not a fun topic, but I'm not going to be stressed out if something happens to you. And I don't want you to be stressed out if something happens to me. So let's work together. And if they have done their documents, then you're like, oh, well, how was it? What did it look like? Who did you use? What was, and now you have someone to go alongside you and help you in that process. So I would say start with that like little bit of mindful reflection, and then find somebody as a buddy to kind of go this road with you.
I so appreciate it. No, when you brought up about this being mindful, I haven't even thought of the word mindful even correlated with something like this. So this is like, I'm writing down notes over here, but this has been awesome.
Yeah. And so, Abby, for you, what's important to tell other athletes about financial literacy and just kind of getting a control of your finances as an athlete?
I would just say use your resources, even if you think that you don't need them at a certain point in your career, whether you're in the very beginning of your career, whether you're in your prime, or even if you're thinking, okay, maybe it's time to hang up my jersey, right? As soon as you possibly can, use your resources, talk to the veterans, talk to people that have been around for so long, talk to people that have so much experience. Just use your resources, get as much clarity and insight as you possibly can as early on in your career as you possibly can.
Thank you so much.
Advice. There are no dumb questions. Ask as many as you want to of any person that you come across, because by asking questions, you always just gather information. And the more we know, the better off we are to be able to make decisions that are going to be in our best interest. So absolutely build your network, ask the resources around you, and tons and tons and tons of questions.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. Thank you, Lauren and Abby, for such an engaging conversation. I know it was a hard conversation. I think this is one of the tougher ones that we've had to do in terms of the financial literacy series, but I really just want to thank you both for being so honest and genuine and engaging in terms of talking about estate planning and shopping for insurance. Appreciate both of you joining me this evening. And I want to give a big thank you to our sponsor, Gainbridge, a digital platform providing direct access to trusted financial products and free financial literacy education, giving your future a boost. Click on the link to find the articles we talked about today, as well as many more resources on financial education and literacy. We will see you next time. Thank y'all.